Good afternoon, Bears. Tomorrow morning, we are going to be meeting in the gym for a staff PD talking about look fors in the classroom. And I thought it'd be a good idea for us to revisit the topics we talked about at the beginning of the year regarding our why, our how, and our what. Um, so just taking a look here at what's on the screen, I want you guys to think back and remember the reasons we discussed for our being, basically our major why, and that is to positively impact our school community through producing productive members of society. And that is a definitely a much larger mission than coming to school every day and getting kids to pass classes and graduate, but looking at the impact that we're capable of having as a school community, that is our larger why. We also had some conversation about just our school culture and remember just a reminder to how we as adults and the staff at this campus are the ones who set the culture and how we go about our business and how we do things and how that culture, hopefully a positive culture, impacts the school climate in general and the environment that our kids have to learn in. We had that conversation about that and some of the words that we had. If you guys remember the Padlet activity we did, um, you can see kind of the big words, the ones that were spoken most often are on the screen here. We talked a lot about having high expectations, about being a school community, and really just holding to our traditions of excellence, both in the classroom and in the hallways and on the fields of play and everywhere that we represent ourselves. So that was very important to us as a kind of a definition to who we are as a site and how we go about our business. And lastly, the what part of this, um, we talked about just having some high expectations and realized outcomes. And in looking at all of these, they should all be constant. This is not something that should be fluctuating up and down. This is not something that should be, you know, good at some times and not at others, but really just being constant in why we do what we do, how we go about it, and what it is that we do. So the focus for tomorrow morning's meeting is actually going to be on instruction. Obviously, this is staff PD, so we're going to be focusing on instruction for that piece for tomorrow. But just think about this kind of as a whole. Tomorrow morning, we'll be focusing on this academic piece, but we did talk about how it all fits together and how it points back to, at the end of the day, how are we supporting our kids reaching that readiness level so that when they leave here, they go out and they are productive members of society. So again, keep this in mind as we are looking at the rest of this slideshow and this data that I'm going to talk about and how it impacts our student outcomes. So I'm going to kind of focus in on walkthrough data. Our admin team has been doing their walkthroughs every week. You can see to this date, this was created on the 6th. The last data pool was on the 6th, which was last Friday. So we up to that day, we've done 222 walkthroughs. And I'm by walkthroughs, I mean academic walkthroughs. We've actually been in classrooms a lot more than that. But the time spent sitting there for 10 to 15 minutes in your classrooms as a full walkthrough to allow us to kind of get a good idea and a good picture of what's happening, we've done 222 of those to this point. Um, Before we dive into that data, I do want to remind you, these are what have been identified as the bare necessities or slash the MUHSD must-haves. They're all in line for planning for student success. These are the things that when we talk about having a student-centered environment, when we talk about what it means to plan consistently, these are the things that we're talking about. Creating a lesson that for a student is easy to follow, a lesson that does the things that are basics, bare minimums for our students to understand and follow, and at the end of a class period or at the end of a day, show that they have learned what it is that they were supposed to learn. So the first data point I want to look at here is related to having a learning target or a learning objective. You can see that when we go into classrooms, you see the red part is the times that we've observed it, when we've seen it, when it's been readily available to us or to the students. It's there, and if not, then you see that larger percentage there. So we're really not seeing that done consistently on a daily basis. And why is that important? Well, it's important for students to know what it is they're learning and why they're learning it every day. I know that sometimes those things may seem like it's checking a box to have a learning target so that when an administrator walks in, he or she might know what's going on, but that's not what it's about at all. It's about communicating the intention of learning for the day for the students so that they are clear about what it is they're doing, and more importantly, why it's important that they learn it. And again, you see on the left side of the screen here, those are also part of our expectations, baseline expectations for the bare necessities and the MUHSD must-haves. So we're not performing very consistently with that one. Moving on to the next one, and this one is actually one of the ones that we asked you guys about, and you can see on the picture there on the left, you guys even as a staff, when we talked about this, realized that this was something that you kind of struggle with, and our walkthrough data has also verified that, and that is to have regular CFUs to assess student progress throughout the day. That could be whether or not you're lecturing or whether the students are doing an activity. It could be anything, but are we stopping and checking in with our students to make sure they are getting out of whatever we're supposed to be doing, what we want them to get out of those activities? And we are, again, consistently not doing that very well, or not doing that very consistently. 31% of the times that we've observed in your classrooms do we see, some form of check-ins, structured check-ins happening with our students. The next one here is critical thinking. That's measured by DOK. So when we are in your classrooms and we see something at a DOK 2 or higher, we will check that box as a must-have on our walkthrough form. And right now, again, consistency is an issue for us. I don't think that consistently we are planning every single day to make sure our kids are hitting that mark. And I understand that sometimes, during lessons, we plan for that to happen at some point in a lesson, but maybe it's not happening while an administrator is in there. But over the course of 222 walkthroughs, I would still expect this percentage to be a little bit higher, as we are staying in those classrooms for anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes at a time, usually when we're in there. So this is something, again, back to that word consistency, we need to be a little bit better at consistently planning to check in with our kids to make sure that they are hitting, that we're asking them the types of questions to push their thinking up to DOK 2 and higher during the course of the classroom. The next one is communication. This one is a little trickier. I think, especially with all the work that we did last year on communication, I think that all of you guys understand the importance of getting our students talking in class, and I think you're doing that. But I think we also probably need to provide a little bit more clarification on what we mean by communication. We need our students to be speaking academically in a manner where there is some sort of an expectation to the communication. We are seeing a lot of, turn and talks, which is great. We do need our kids to talk, but there is not as much accountability to those turn and talks as there probably needs to be to ensure that all of our kids are actually engaging in those conversations that we want them to have. Academic discourse, basically. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit more as we go in. We should be talking about this tomorrow morning and then onward into the school year, because the comparison to the way you all rated yourselves, you can see in the picture on the right versus what we're seeing on the left, but versus what we're seeing on the right is not adding up. And again, I think that's just solely a consistency problem. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. The next set of data is about collaboration, similar to the communication, and that I think that our understanding maybe of what collaboration is or is not maybe needs to be clarified a little bit, because I think, again, we are rating ourselves much higher on this than what we are observing in our walkthroughs during class. We are only observing true collaboration at 22% of the time versus, almost 78% of the time where we're not seeing true collaboration. And by collaboration, we don't mean divide and conquer, but a true task that requires students to actually work together as partners or in roles or in some particular fashion, where it is a true collaborative effort and not just a division of labor. So that's something we'll obviously continue to work on. Creativity, that is also something that, that's a challenge for us. Giving students some choice in how they demonstrate their learning is usually the most common way that creativity is established in a classroom, but that's something that as a site, I think just in instruction in general, that's difficult to do at times. But we do need to find ways to challenge our kids to be a little bit more creative, because at the end of the day, anytime you want to push up into those DOK 3s and 4s, it's probably going to require some kids to be able to kind of determine how they want to creatively demonstrate their learning. So that's something that obviously we'll work on, but we're not seeing very much when we go out into classrooms right now. And this last piece, connecting back to the learning target, actually is some sort of a reflection or closure at the end of the day. You can see on the bar graph there, or the pie chart, that we are not doing as many walkthroughs at the end of the period. That's the blue portion, the largest portion of it. So we take that into consideration. It is not, checked off as a negative when we're not there. But when we are there, you can see in this red and yellow portion, we are not seeing closure nearly as much as we should be. Only 6% of the time are we actually seeing closure. So that's something that, again, having that call back at the end of the class to make sure our kids have gotten out of the day what we want to get out of the day, or giving them an opportunity to reflect on what they've learned. It is very important for us to do that, so that the next day when we pick this back up, we have a starting point, a reference point, knowing where to go if we need to make adjustments, or if we don't need to make adjustments based on what has happened the day before. So these are really kind of just our necessities, the baseline data. The question is on the screen, what is this data telling us about our instruction? And I've been saying it the entire time through this whole slideshow. We are right now very inconsistent in doing what we know how to do. I don't think that any of those things on the screen that we are looking at when we go in to do walkthroughs are new to you. I know that all of you guys know how to do it. As instructors, our staff is awesome. I have the utmost confidence in you guys' abilities to be effective teachers. We just have to remember why we do those things, because they are important for our students to create the most student-centered, friendly environment that we can possibly create for them when we're designing lessons. So we will have this conversation tomorrow morning as a staff. Hopefully you watched this before then. If you don't, that's okay. We'll have this conversation as a staff on Wednesday morning, and we will continue it as the year goes on, because it's important that we continue to work toward having consistent methods and manners of doing things across campus as part of our MTSS and our Tier 1 interventions, for just creating a solid foundation for our kids across the campus. Thank you guys. We will talk to you soon.